Ron, lovely to see you today. Where does this podcast find you today?
I am in London, where I
You,
spend about half the year, mostly the winter months. My daughters live here, and the rest of the time I'm in New York.
because London's wonderfully sunny and bright in the winter, isn't it?
It's 5 o'clock here, and it's been pitch black for about an hour.
There's that Talking Head song, Big City Dark, dark in the daytime.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's fish.
Is that who it is? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think it is dark in the daytime.
Dark in the daytime. Yeah. Before we get into some of the things that people can do, tell us a little bit about your background and where you come from and how it got you to where you are today.
I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. If you ever read a Philip Roth novel, it was a few blocks away from there. I was privileged to meet him once or twice in life, not for too long, once we had dinner together, because we both went to the same high school and whatever. And from Newark, you can see Manhattan. And that was Oz for me when I was a kid. And that's where I spent most of my life. So through a very roundabout way, I found myself in the printing industry. And I became a salesman for a financial printing company, eventually started my own company, which was very successful. And along the way, I also had a love for theater, so I became a theater producer, initially helping a few nonprofits with some of the money I made, and then really spending some time loving it. So I became a theater producer on Broadway and in London on the West End. And I was sort of flying high. There was nothing I couldn't do. I helped start a few restaurants in Manhattan, which are still going. I did all this other stuff, the typical successful entrepreneurial life. And I was a late starter. I was a late bloomer. So I didn't get married till I was 50. And I didn't have kids till I was in my 50s. I had my first daughter when I was 54, my second when I was 57. So then 2008 was looming already, the financial crisis of 2008. It hit my company really hard. And as I write about in the book called A Life Yet to Live, I have a copy of it here somewhere. I was on a train to a business meeting in New Jersey, and something hit me. There's a whole bunch of things that happened that morning, and something hit me. It was a real holy shit moment, saying, I have these two kids. One of them's 6 months old, and one of them's 3 years old, and they need a dad. And if things go the way they normally go in life, especially with lifespan, now, around 76 or 77 for men, and that being a declining health span, this is going to impact them. Now, the poignancy of that also comes from the fact that my father died when I was 7, and I grew up without a dad. So I said to myself, if I don't do something, they're going to have the same fate as me, and I don't want that to happen to them. So I went and started researching everything I could possibly find, and then started practicing all kinds of things. Luckily, I had been active in my 40s and 50s. I was a master swimmer, then a master swim team, and I went to the gym and I did this and that. Not as much as I do now, but I did it. So I had a lot of aerobic experience in my body already. And I started doing all this stuff and experimenting with all the stuff that's out there. It's all public information. I asked a few doctors. There again, there's a chapter in the book called For Doctors about, what can I do? And unfortunately, Western medicine doesn't want to do very much preventive stuff. I think that's changing now with people like Peter Attia and, some of the concierge medicine people. But back then, this was 15 years ago, they would just go, what's going to get you? Let me look at your chart. What's going to get you? So I found that the functional medicine community was much more prepared to look at prevention as opposed to treatment, as opposed to reaction. And there I found some advice. There again, I don't think you can do this stuff without your own reason for wanting to stick around. We all don't want to get sick. We all don't want to die, but we all know that that's eventually going to happen. I think health span we have much more control over than lifespan. But the only way to get onto the health journey is to figure out what is important about your life and really have that answered by your conscience and say, what matters to me? Why? Why do I want to do this? What do I want? And this period of life can be extraordinarily wonderful if you begin to answer that question. So there's my long answer about your, sorry about that.
So, what is your vision for the future?
When I first started out, I didn't realize how wonderful it is to just be and just be alive. I was so consumed with running around and staying busy and succeeding and starting one new project after another that the world inside me, and I'm talking about the emotional world inside me as well as the physical world inside me. There's been a lot of psychotherapy and other stuff in my journey as well. It's not just exercise and diet. It's just a wonderful place to be. It's just a wonderful place to be. I have my book. I'm probably going to write another one. I have a weekly newsletter that I do to the extent that I'm not a doctor or a professional in any way. So there's my disclaimer. But I'm going on 75. I'm fully functional as far as I can tell, in some ways more functional and stronger than I was in my 50s. And, there's obviously some stuff that is not as robust as it used to be. Recovery takes longer, but I'm just working at it every day, and it's a pretty wonderful place to be, I mean, I still do some stuff, I still do some business stuff. I do some theater stuff, but not the way I used to. It's more of a hobby than anything.
So, let's talk about the stuff that you're doing.
Well, there again, in the book, there's a chapter on the way I started out was, do you know Alejandro Younger, the guy who wrote the book Clean? It's a detox program. He used to be a cardiologist, and he burnt out a little bit, and he started meditating and whatever. Anyway, he came up with this detox, a three-week detox. And that ended up forming the basis of my dietary habits. I found out over 3 weeks that after cutting out alcohol, caffeine, anything with gluten, a whole bunch of other stuff, it basically ended up being vegetables and protein. That's what my body liked, didn't like all that stuff. And I found that, eating in that non-inflammatory way was, my friend. So that was one thing. I started going, there was a book out at the time called Younger Next Year,
Oh,
written by
yeah.
Chris Crowley, I think his name was.
Yeah, those two guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And Henry, I forgot his last name.
There's like a doctor and a Wall
Yeah,
Street.
yeah, yeah. It was a doctor and an old guy, Chris Crowley. Yeah. And they just said, go out and get yourself a heart monitor
Mhm.
and start doing it, at certain different levels and whatever. So I started doing all that stuff. I had been doing yoga for a while, but not seriously. So I ramped that up a little bit. And then after feeling the effects and the benefits, all this stuff takes time to feel the effects and the benefits. The detox, I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks and have stayed that way ever since. So I realized that most of the crap that I have been eating is really, and I found the weight that my body wanted to be at. The exercise had its intended effect. I got stronger. My cardio stuff, got better. I now do, and so cut to now, I now do 2 or 3 zone 2 workouts a week, anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. I do one high intensity workout a week. I do 1 or 2 strength sessions a week. I do 1 or 2 yoga classes a week. And I do a morning routine every morning, which is like 15, 20 minutes, which is a combination of yoga, stretching, breathing. I do some of the Wim Hof stuff. I do some of the Patrick McCowan stuff from the Oxygen
Oh
Advantage.
yeah, sure. We've had Patrick on. Yeah.
The regime that you pick needs to be suited to you, or in my case, to me. But the stuff is out there. I mean, this space, there's so much stuff in this space that it's almost too big of a feast. It's picking can be hard, but you are the arbiter, you are the arbiter. So
All of this tends to be a bit more than what people may be thinking. Like it requires time, effort every day.
yeah, and what you said is, what do you do now? What's for the future? Well, if I'm doing this stuff 2 or 3 hours a day, that's a big part of the day,
Yeah.
you know, you know. So that's important. But there's an enormous amount of joy in it, of
Mhm.
in doing it. It's not like, oh God, I got to go to the gym. There's an enormous amount of joy in doing it. And the benefits for me, I've now got a 20-year-old daughter in vet school and a 17-year-old daughter who's finishing up high school and going to college next year. And, I look, and they're magnificent human beings. And I just look back and say that, was partly because of that decision I made on the train that day, you know. And I still do a 30-mile charity walk with them every year. I still do. It's a little thing in our house. BKS Iyengar, one of the yoga stalwarts who brought yoga to the US, has this thing where you do as many bridges, upside down push-ups, basically they are, wheels, as you are years old on your birthday.
Oh,
What he didn't say is that you got to start training for that a couple months ahead of time. So I did 74 last year, and I'm on my way to doing 75 this year. So we have all this little stuff. Both girls are very conscious of their health, which I'm very proud of. They know the score when it comes to that. So
I think what I want to get at here, there's a certain pandering, I'm going to say, I'm going to make some enemies by saying this, but there's a certain amount of pandering that goes on out in a lot of the media. My favorite target for this is the New York Times. And they tell people like, okay, 30 minutes of walking a day is great. Well, yeah, if you're doing zero, that's great. But
yeah,
to really make an impact, what you're saying is, I was just in the gym for 2 hours. Some of this is really rather uncomfortable. Like sprint training is horrible. It's just
yep,
going to throw up every time I do it. But
yep,
there's real impacts on my VO2 max. And
absolutely.
VO2 max is one of the prime indicators of mortality. And I encourage people to sort of go to wherever their level is and whatever their ambition is. But, you mentioned Atia, and I don't know, Peter. I think he's got a great book. He talks about he wants his people to be at the elite level of the decade below
Oh,
where they're
yeah,
at.
I know.
And to do that, it's not something that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. That takes a couple of years of like
Oh, yeah.
just grinding this out like all the time. And then you can do amazing things. But that's like if you want to do amazing things, if you want to live that kind of a life, it requires an investment of time and energy. And I think what you brought up earlier, what's your why? What's that vision that you have going forward? Because I think that just putting numbers up and saying like you can do whatever, okay, that's great. That'll get you for a little way, but to really keep this up month after month, year after year, you need to have a reason for this. And it sounds like for you, it's your family.
It's partly my family, and it has now become a daily wonder of what new inspiration I can have, what new wonder I can have. In the big picture, I think man was put on Earth, or developed the powers that we have as Homo sapiens, men and women, to say, what the hell is this all about? To look up at the skies or to look at nature and just say, and we're still the most magnificent creations in the universe, you know, even though on a day-to-day basis we go, oh, well, I don't matter that much, and, all that other stuff. And there again, I go back to the emotional stuff. Part of this exercise for me was uncovering my resistance to being healthy. And my resistance,
Talk to me about that. I want to
okay.
understand resistance to being healthy.
Well, I mean, you see it in the amount of sugar people eat and the amount of
Oh,
sitting people do. And it's not like the information is not out there.
right,
There, they just don't want to hear it. And part of that is I don't matter enough.
right.
I don't matter enough. You know, I just wrote an article on the website called What's in Your Health Toolbox. And for a lot of people, what their health toolbox consists of call the doctor. Whereas my health toolbox consists of a preventive side, which is by far the bigger compartment, and a reactive side, which is here are my resources when I do get sick, or here are the things I can do when a muscle gets pulled, or I have a tight iliotibial band, so that needs work, but it needs work. It needs trigger point balls, and it needs rollers, and it needs stretching, and it needs all
Yeah.
kinds of other stuff. And we all need a giant health toolbox, a giant health toolbox. But if your only health toolbox, if your only thing in the toolbox is if I'm sick, I'll call the doctor, that's just not enough. There's a lot of resistance to this stuff. I had this conversation with there's a guy out in San Diego called Rico Cavalia who has a podcast as well. And he just gets frustrated. He says, why don't people do it? Why don't people do it?
Mhm.
And I don't have an answer to that. I mean, I do have an answer to it, but they're the only people who can really answer that question is them. You know, do you matter enough? Do you matter enough to be healthy? Do you matter? Is your day-to-day experience of life precious enough to want to have another day, another healthy day?
I'll give you my thought on this. I think there's a number of factors here. A, everybody's doing an ROI, and they're saying, if I do X, do I really get Y? Does Y really happen for me?
Okay, I
I'm
get
not
that.
sure. Then there's the next thing is sort of what you were talking about, which is I'm not worth it. Maybe it works. I'm just not worth this. And I think the last part is to say, if you acknowledge that there's a chance that these things may work, okay, you can suspend disbelief and say, maybe I'm worth it today. But then the big one is now you're responsible. Now you're responsible.
Yeah,
So 70, 80, 90% of your health outcomes, that's you. You did
yeah,
that. So you get to choose, as my friend Julia says, you get to pick your hard. So hard can be the very unpleasant thing that I did at 5:30 in the morning, or hard can be in a hospital bed with a lot of tubes. That's up to you. That's on you. And you can either choose to make investments in your future to do things that will cause better outcomes in the future or not. As you said, this is not secret information. This has been out there for 2,000 years. We all know what we should do. It's not that hard. But you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm responsible for this. And I think the other part of this, I'm sorry to talk too much, but
no, I'm fine.
you have me agitated here. The thing is, it goes both ways. So it's reinforcing. So
Yeah,
if you start eating better, if you start getting stronger, you say to yourself, oh, that's possible. I didn't think that
it's
was possible. I wonder what
yeah,
else is possible. So that opens up this window
absolutely.
imagination. If you go the other way, the other side happens. So, like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and eat donuts and watch television. I guess this is just my grim lot in life. I'm just going to suck it up.
Yeah,
Okay, your choice. No value judgment, whatever you want to do.
yeah.
But we have agency in these affairs.
We have agency. Unfortunately, we also are getting bombarded every second
Yeah.
with people out there saying they can fix us
Yes.
if we just do this or that or whatever. And where that word agency means inside.
Yeah.
That is your conscience. That is your life. That is the genuine article that is you. There's a wonderful book by a woman named Bronnie Ware called The Top Five Regrets of the Dying. And the first one, and the most popular one, the one that she countered the most, was I wish I had lived by my own resources as opposed to following the advice of others and being what others wanted me to be. Bronnie is a palliative care nurse. And when an 85-year-old woman is saying that to her, who's on the verge of dying, it's a horrible, horrible thing. This is a woman who's dying with all the regrets of not having lived her life in a way that was genuine. And I don't want to die like that.
Oh, no, it's Marlon Brando on the waterfront. I could have been a contender. Well, could have been anything.
Yeah,
Like, I might
yeah.
not be able to get
Right.
where I want to go, but I'm going to be a contender. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to be in there doing it. I'm going to make it. I try and encourage people, have you fulfilled the promise of your potential? You
Yep.
know, can you become the best version of you today, which is not the best version of you 20, 30, 40, whatever years ago? Like, who are you today? And what can you do with that? And I do not want to be that woman. And I will not be that woman
Good.
on
I
bed.
can tell. This is another thing I've done with part of my life. There's a psychiatrist who was a pupil of Freud's. Her name was Karen Horney. I don't know if you ever heard of her, Horney. And I had some affiliation with the Karen Horney Clinic in New York and some other stuff. But she has a psychological theory where she broke with Freud, actually, saying that everybody has something in them called the motive for self-realization, and that you're born with it, and
Yes,
that if it's squelched, you're in trouble. You got to find it again.
that's right.
You got to find it again. And for me, this voyage of health and selfdom, if you will, of later life has been, a lifesaver for me. It just has been a lifesaver for me. It is, it's like everything I thought about life, I've now rejigged, and it's now, life is great. And you wouldn't think at 75 that you'd be saying that, but it is. So
It's wonderful to hear. I smile when I hear you saying this,
yeah,
Ron. And
yeah. Think of me as the ghost of Christmas future. Keep working at it, and you'll feel like me.
oh, it's similar to you. I'm a bit of a late bloomer. I know to do the sort of stuff I want to do out in the world, I'm going to need another 10, 15 years of game
Yep.
on. And to do that, okay, this is what I need to do. My feeling is, especially as one gets a little older, I'll say, like, I don't know, 40 or 50, if you're not actively trying to reach out to expand your social group, to increase your strength and physicality, to increase your knowledge base, to stay curious about things, you are shrinking. And there's just the inertia that gravity is pulling at you all the time. And to just stay still, you need to move forward.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going back, and which is fine. If that's your jam, okay, it's not my
Sure.
jam.
But it comes with consequences.
Yeah,
I spend summers out in the North Fork of Long Island. It's not South,
lovely. Sure.
in Southold.
I know it.
And I love that area, and I love the people there. They're mostly blue collar, fishermen, construction people, whatever. But I got to tell you, being in the supermarket is with people much younger than me is like being in a geriatric ward. It's walkers,
Yeah.
it's people without the carts, without the shopping carts, they would have a hard time walking and balancing. And it's a shame. It's sad. It's sad to see.
I go back and forth between Park City and Manhattan. Landing at Salt Lake City Airport and seeing the physical state of the people waddling around, clear signs of metabolic disease. They're probably mostly diabetic.
Absolutely.
They're just a disaster.
Arthritis, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
All kinds of stuff. And I really dislike that airport. And I just think, like, get me out of here. Like, whatever they've got, patch. Like, if this is contagious, I don't want this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about sarcopenia. We're on this discussion of moving forward or you're moving backward. What's sarcopenia?
Sarcopenia is just the loss of muscle as you get older. It's a natural process that happens. It can be slowed down, it can be stopped, it can be reversed
Yeah.
with strength training. Strength training is just what it says. It's lifting stuff. Our bodies are anti-gravity machines.
Hmm.
We started, when we started standing up a couple million years ago, it was a whole different ballgame. You know, it changed the way our hips function. It changed the way our digestion functioned. It changed the way everything, and everything runs by, it's no accident that you eat at the top and your food gets digested and your food gets digested below, you know?
Right. Right.
So the most important part of that equation are your legs, you know, especially as you get older, because you don't want to fall. You want to continue being stable. And I have found, I mean, to start out with, it's fine to use, you know, just your body weight to do lunges and, you know, things like that, squats, things like that. But I have found that you get to a point where you definitely need to augment that with weights. Now, the difference in some of the stuff that I have found for myself and recommend, which is taught to me by a great friend and trainer named Graham Fairley here in London. You know, I have a video of one on the website, which is basically taking a kettlebell from the floor in a low squat, standing up with it, and then moving it over your head. You know, so it's a full, you're using every part of your body. You're balancing. There's some other stuff that's going to be coming up. I just went to see him and he showed me some other stuff with pulleys and with all kinds of other things. But you know, these, I forgot what it's, isobaric or iso something or other exercises. They're one plane exercises that you do
Yeah.
in a mirror, you know, with one muscle group. It's just for people who want to look good. It doesn't do anything for your function. You know, as a matter of fact, it will overwork one muscle compared to the other and things like that. So if you can find full body movements to work with, there again, I have a few, and it's all myofascial, and you know, it's following the ways. Look, the our bodies were built to throw, to walk, to fight and pull, to climb. So anything that mimics all those movements, if you have torque in your body, if you're going like this, like throwing a punch, it's a whole different world than going with a machine like this, you know? So you really want to engage your entire body with that stuff. So, and like I said, in my case, I've got more muscles now than I did in my 50s. You know, I hope it takes a lot of work and I hope it lasts, you know, but it's a blessing, you know, it's a blessing. You can have, you know, you can have Peter Attia talks about his later life decathlon or something like
Yeah,
that.
I love that. I think that's
And
brilliant.
one of his things is to take a heavy bag and put it in an overhead
Yeah.
compartment in an airplane when you're 85 or 90. Well, I
Right.
want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to do that. You know,
I've been adding hopping and jumping. I don't
I
know.
don't do that, but I see people do it.
I was just sort of shy about that for a while, but then I started doing it, and it's your type 2 fast twitch muscles.
Yeah.
I don't jump down, I jump up.
Yeah. The cartilage is much thinner as you get older. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, had a lot of discussions about that.
Yeah.
But I think that those sort of movements, which I found, you know, like a year ago, well, would have been impossible. I couldn't do them. Some of it is strength, and a lot of it is just the neuromuscular signaling, being able to coordinate and activate all of this stuff at once, which I find it makes me feel much more agile out in the world, knowing that I can like,
I don't do it, but I'll try it.
yeah.
I have access to it in the gym.
Yeah, it's first couple times my trainer had me do it. They had these little plyo things that you're supposed to jump over. I think I broke like half a dozen of them because I didn't clear them. I just go up and land on the thing. I just didn't have the coordination to like do it. And
Right.
you know, now it's like, okay, I can do that. I think one of the things that at least I've learned about training is the big thing is forcing myself to recover. I don't like recovery. I like to just sort of go, go, go. What was that process for you, having to learn how to do that? And what are you doing?
Well, I'm like you. I like to move every day. There are some days when my heart rate variability reading in the morning is
Right.
low.
Yeah.
I feel like crap. And
Yeah.
I just go, I really did a big one yesterday and whatever. So today I will, you know, no movement is not an option for me. I'll either garden, I'll do some gentle walking, I'll do some yoga, gentle yoga, I'll do some, there are all kinds of, that famous word hormesis, the hormetic activities
Right.
that promote, healing. And healing is an amazing thing that we're all born with and can access whenever we want. All we got to do is breathe and be conscious of our breath. And, there it is. It's the parasympathetic stuff of the breath. And I have to just sort of say, okay, today's a good day to write. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe
Right.
I'll just be bored. And that's okay too. You know,
Yeah.
I just wrote another article, which is going to come out, I think, this week, called The Art of Having Nothing to Do. And sometimes just having nothing to do, you're still alive. Your body's still going crazy. It's still trillions of biochemical and electrical reactions every second. And, it doesn't mean just because you have nothing to do doesn't mean that you're worthless. You're still alive. Everything's good. You know, everything's good. You're recovering. So there's also some ways that you can, if I did a big leg workout, then I can do arms and so you can do that as well. But there's some of it is just appreciating life, you know. And sometimes it's just, okay, I'm not going to do anything today, you know.
I think it's listening to your body and knowing where you're at. And
Yeah,
also, there's a certain gift that I've been trying to practice recently, which is this idea of nothingness, this idea of embracing boredom and purposely not looking at my phone and
absolutely.
just standing. I'm just standing. I'm waiting for the elevator. I'm standing. I'm waiting for the train. I'm just here. And I find that it required a bit of discipline, like to do that.
Well,
But then it's nice.
it's a form of prayer. It's a form of prayer, or it's a form of meditation. It's a form of religion. It's whatever. My focus when I do that is just existence. And isn't existence itself wonderful without all the stuff to distract us? As a matter of fact, all that stuff, you begin to realize that I don't need most of it.
Sort of homeostasis of just
Absolutely.
being at neither end and just sort of in the middle. And okay, everything's all right now. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay to be. I'm entitled.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I can be a human being, not a human doing. I'm a human doing all the time. And here
Yeah.
we're just going to take a moment to just do human being and see what that feels like.
Yeah. And you mentioned something which is, I think, vital, which is the health journey is in your body. It's not in your head. It can be managed by your head,
Right.
but ultimately keeping in touch with your body and your bodily sensations and everything else is going to be your best guide in this process.
The vast majority of your brain's energy is spent on your body, not ruminating or making plans. Your brain is designed to
Absolutely.
control your physiology. I think there are some people, I'm not one of them, who sort of can think themselves into doing things. I need to sort of act myself into right thinking and
Or feel yourself into doing it.
feel myself right. I need that sort of feedback of
Yeah.
my body to know. Not everyone's like that, but that's how I am.
Yeah.
Ron, what's the name of your book?
A Life Yet to Live, Finding Health, Vitality, and Joy After 60. Let me get a copy of it.
Let's see what the book looks like.
It's published by Amazon,
Yeah,
self-published.
very nice.
But it's been out for about a year now, and it's doing okay, It's not, And the website is the Ron Kastner with a K, KAST.com. And I write a couple of articles every week, a couple of posts every week. It's fun. I do it as much for me as I do for the audience, because there's things that I've been thinking about or doing, or they're reporting on things that have happened to me. And it's a lot of fun. It's great.
I enjoy how you've opened up this window into a life phase for us who are not there.
You say you want another 10 or 15 years. I want another 20.
I'm just saying 10 or 15 doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah. But I want
Then I can slow
20.
down.
I want another 20 or so.
Yeah.
And, when I first started this, it was about raising my kids. And now I'm going, if I'm lucky, I may see my grandkids too.
There you go.
I don't know. It all started with, like I said, a thunderbolt of inspiration from inside saying, this is what matters.
Hmm.
And without that, I don't know if you can do a journey like this. Because like you said, it's hard. I went to, for my yearly checkup, and my doctor's a typical internist, whatever. And we started talking about Peter Ortega. Because who's got time to do all that stuff? And I said, I do.
Right.
I make time to do all that stuff.
It's a value judgment. How much time are you watching television? How much time are you scrolling nonsense on your phone?
And it's not a competition of like who's going to live longest, who's going to be. I have a great friend that had just had dinner with in Manhattan last week, and he said he had just come from the hospital visiting somebody who, something happened to him. He had a brain tumor or something like that, and he was get me a drink, and he was like, I don't want to be sick as I get older. I don't want to be sick as I get older. That was just an awful scene.
Yeah.
You can't eliminate the risk of anything, but you can vastly lower the risk by doing the kinds of things that we're doing. So
Agency.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and being proactive. Yeah,
Yeah. Don't wait for the bad thing to happen.
prevent.
Ron, it's been wonderful having you on the show today.
Been a pleasure, David.
Hopeful that there will be some sunshine in your future, knowing where you are.
I was in Manhattan last week, and it was just beautiful and
Yeah.
brilliant sunshine. And here we are.
Yeah.
It rained all day here.
Right.
Now,
Well, the flowers are really wonderful. So we can.
springtime is great. It's been a pleasure. Thank you again.
Thank you for your time today, Ron. Take care.